Hey everyone, and welcome. I'm so excited that you're here today because we're talking about why kids lose motivation in homeschooling. Now, this is something that was actually sparked by a recent conversation I had with a mom that I was mentoring. And we were talking about high school stuff, but she had other kids too. And I asked her about her other kids, and she said, well, you get it, it's just something that, we're just having, it's kind of a rough patch. And, it's just, you get it. It's just something we have to get through right now. And I think she wanted me to agree with her, but inside, I was like and I nodded, but I was like, "Hey, you can reach out to me and we can talk about that too," because it's not so I in my mind, I was like, "Oh my gosh, please please, that's not how it has to be. It should never be something that we have to get through." And so I don't want to shoot on you, but on the other hand, I want to clarify today that what we're experiencing when those situations happen is not something that we just have to endure. Okay. There's a reason behind that. And it doesn't have to be that way. So I'm going to share with you today a little bit about that. And you might have even thought to yourself, homeschooling, yeah, you know the struggle. I've heard that too. I've heard moms tell me that, "Oh, you get it. You know the struggle." No, actually, I do understand where you're coming from and I get it. I've been there, but it doesn't have to be that way. I've also heard people say, "The season is just hard. This is just a hard season." I get that too. I've been there too. But when we are really focusing on building our culture, when we're really focusing on building the foundations, and we're going to talk more about that, it doesn't have to be that way. And we don't just have to get through it. It doesn't have to be like that. And in fact, when we're not just getting through it, oh my gosh, the amount of love of learning that happens, the amount of joy, the amount of everything is so much better. It's so, oh, and so much more learning happens. So much more learning happens. So when I hear people say this, and I see this all the time in social media, in the moms I mentor, it's something that's natural to us, and we do it in lots of other places in our life. I'm going to share that about it's just like a resignation. It's not a failure, but it's just like well, we just have to deal, right? I I know we want an agreement with that, but I'm going to share with you that it doesn't have to be that way and why it got there in the first place. So we don't have to get to that point ever. That's what we really want, right? We really don't want to have to get to that point. I mean, come on. Right? So it's definitely something that is important because it takes energy. It takes energy away from us, it takes energy away from our kids when this happens and we have a low motivation. And let's face it, parenting is hard. It's just hard, right? I get it. I'm still in it too. It's hard. There are good days, there are bad days, and seasons change with growth and with everything else. But we end up justifying things that don't have to be that way because we don't know the solution, and because we say, oh well, it just must be the way it is. Now I'm telling you that I've lived through this in lots of other ways as well. So, and I've heard people say this a lot of ways. So when we're talking about our weight, or we're talking about our body image or things like, well, I'm just built like this. Well, this is just part of my genes. Well, this is just da 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 da. Well, this, when we're talking about, our schedules and our priorities and maybe exercising or something like that. Oh, I just don't have time for that. Oh, well, I'm super busy and this is just not something that fits in my schedule. Well, I'm really busy right now. This is just the season we're in. It'll let up later. It's just the way it is. I understand. Trust me, I get it. I get it on all different uh, different ways and different areas of our life. I get it. It just doesn't have to be what I found actually about a lot of different areas of my life is it doesn't have to be like that in almost any area of your life. And so this is something that I want to share with you about why we're here and how we can prevent it from not happening in the first place. Because I mean, if we can just avoid it altogether, that would be great. But if it is happening, what we can start to do to kind of fix it, okay? So, what's really happening when we have low motivation is that our love of learning in our household has dropped. Whether it's yours, it started with you, whether it started with the kids, something has changed and love of learning has dropped. You don't notice it typically, and you wouldn't name it that way unless you knew, because it looks like is low motivation. It looks like complaining. It looks like frustration. It looks like, all right, here we go. We're getting to our math. I'll do it. They still might be doing things. They still might be complying with what the have tos are for the day, but they're not excited. They're not joyful. There's a little bit of lower just energy going on. Joy is thinner. Ownership is not as high as it could be. Everything is harder than it used to be. That sometimes that feels just heavy. That feels like a little bit of overwhelm. That feels like, oh, why won't these kids just do this? They used to, and now they don't, right? So when love of learning is low, it affects everyone. It affects the whole family. It affects your rhythms. It affects everything. And you start to feel like, why is this more me than them? Come on, it's their education. Why am I doing all the work? Instead of it being your family's natural rhythm and being it's just what we do. That's what we want it to feel like, right? And last week I talked about when plans stop working. So a lot of times when plans stop working because we made the plan in the season that we were in, and then the season changed. Then our family dynamic changed. Then somebody developed, one of the kids hit a new growth level, a new development shift. We got a puppy. We had a new baby. We moved. Something happened and something shifted. It doesn't even have to be huge, it can be just a small developmental change. And something shifted. And all of a sudden, our plans that were for that season don't work anymore. And because we didn't have a foundation underneath it, we don't have a constant culture that we built the plans on, it falls apart. And that's when love of learning drops. Do you get what I'm saying? I mean, this is so, if you think about it, it makes total sense. If we don't have a strong foundation of a culture that supports love of learning, that can shift and change and adapt with whatever season we're in, and we can just put new plans on top of that culture that adjust with our levels of love of learning, our levels of development, our levels of whatever the shift is that's happening in our schedule. Those are the little things, but the big thing is the culture. It's like putting up walls in a home without a foundation. You're just putting up. When the ground shifts, all of a sudden, poof, everything falls down and there's nothing holding it up. There's nothing holding up anything. We have to create that culture. So that's what we were talking about last week. And so this week I'm talking about what happens when we have that shift and no foundation is we have love of learning drop. We have that motivation drop. It starts to feel a little hard and we don't recognize it initially because we're not taught to recognize that. Most of us don't even know what it looks like. We don't know the signals, the triggers to look for. And then we end up noticing it when we're like, hey, wait a minute. Why am I doing all the work? Why do I have to nag? Why is there complaining happening? Do you want to go back to school? You ever said that before? I mean, gonna be honest, I have. What that looks like is the end, we don't notice it until the end. We don't notice it until it's there. We didn't see all the little triggers happening beforehand, all the symptoms happening. We only noticed the disease, if you want to say. Then we're like, hey, how did we get here? And where do we go now? I don't know, because everybody's hating life. Or if you're not hating life, at least you feel like there's a lack of inspiration, there's a lack of joy, there's a lack of curiosity. And if you don't fix that, if you don't support that and get that love of learning back up, it'll just keep cycling because what we do naturally is we want to bolster it. We want to put more pressure because we feel more pressure. I talked a little bit about this last week, but we feel more pressure because things aren't happening the way they quote unquote should happen or the way they even were happening. And we're like, hey, people, remember what we were doing before? Remember that was fine. So we put more pressure and then they feel more pressure and we say, "Whoa, we just have to get through this." What message is that sending to your kids? What message is that sending about learning? We just something we have to get through. Honestly, I used to say that in high school when I was teaching high school English because it was just something we had to get through this school sometimes. And it didn't support high level of love of learning. And I tried my very hardest to make it the most inspirational thing I could possibly manage within that system. But I knew that it wasn't going to be that way. And they had 15, or 10 years of school already that killed that love of learning. So I was trying to like push a very dead horse up a hill. It was really, really hard. And so sometimes it feels like that. And we felt that in school. So when we talk to our kids, we're like, hey, man, we just got to get through this. Come on, guys. Come on. And we're trying to inspire through pushing and like, remember what we used to do? But that's when love of learning is low. We have to backtrack and we have to actually bolster that love of learning up, build our culture, that foundation. And then we can start building plans again on top of that. Does that make sense? Because you never should feel like you're surviving homeschool. It should feel like we're on this beautiful journey because it can be that way. And even if you had it that way and it's not now, it can be that way again. We just have to know how to reignite that love of learning, how to build the plans on top of a solid foundation. And it can be amazingly beautiful again. So, struggle is not that goal. It's not the goal for any of us. It's survival doesn't have to happen like that. We can be built on more intentional purpose to make sure that love of learning stays high without everything falling apart when somebody hits a new developmental level or we choose a new curriculum or there's a schedule change that we have for the season. That's constantly happening in our family journey together. It's constantly needing shifts and changes. We have to know to see those triggers and then move. Also, we have to know that we have a foundation and we have to have a foundation to be able to move with that. I hope this is clear to you because this is transformational. This is so eye opening for me when I realized this for myself. And then when working with families over the last several years, this has been so huge for them to see that, oh, it doesn't have to be something I get through. And it's our natural tendency. It's our natural tendency to want to be like, well, it'll be fine later. This is just a tough season. If you have that foundation that moves with all of those changes, then you don't have to survive. You don't have to get through. The motivation doesn't have to drop. It will go back and forth a little bit over time, but if you have the inspiring culture underneath it, it doesn't drop that low. And it doesn't go down to where we're like, "Man, we're really struggling." We have to know the triggers and see the symptoms and then rebuild and shift and move. We have to know that, and we have to have that culture that supports that underneath. I want to leave you with a few questions here. And this is just something to think about, something to ponder in your mind. You may want to journal it. You may want to write it down, have a discussion with your spouse, with your family. If the kids are old enough, just think about, where has love of learning dropped? Where do we see a lower sense of curiosity, a lower sense of motivation, a lower sense of that that joy of learning? I actually right before I got on here, I actually went to my son, and he's 17 now. He's really a lifelong learner, and it's incredible because I it's kind of la la land for me. I didn't grow up that way, but it's amazing. And he was actually reading a science book, and something that's really amazing. He was reading Stephen Hawking, and he was that was on the floor, and then he's on the bed reading a success principle book, and I was like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And he's like, "Oh, I just really wanted to read a success principle book right now. I felt like I really needed it." And he was reading Start With Your Why. You guys probably have heard about that book before. But and I was like, "Okay, well, who's going to complain about that?" I'm like, "Well, we do read the science book too, but I mean, go for it, bud." Like, he just felt like that was what he really needed for the day. And I'm like, "That's awesome. Let's do it." He hardly can pass a bookshelf without picking something out of it. I swear. It's fantastic. And also a problem sometimes. But it's so fun to be able to have that in your home where there's just like this joy and inspiration happening. And you might have had that. But where is it dropping now? Where is that little curiosity level dipping? Where does it feel like more of a have to than a we get to? And is there places where it used to feel normal? It used to feel like our natural rhythm, but maybe it feels a little more overwhelming. It's a little heavier than it used to be. Is there a place where it feels like that for you? Have you normalized it? Have you been ever telling yourself, this is just a phase, this is just a season, this is just the time that we're in right now, we just have to get through it? Have you said that to yourself, and what's behind that? Okay. And then, what are we actually trying to raise? That end goal, who are we trying to raise? The people that we're trying to raise, the adults that we're trying to raise, are we really getting there? Does it feel like we're getting to that point? Because if not, something needs to change. And if it does, kind of, you're like, "Well, yeah, we're getting there, but like it's not really, we're not sure if they're just doing it because they're just doing it, or if they're just doing it because, or they're doing it because they want to, because they're excited about it." There's a difference there. And it can feel really good when all of that lines up together. It feels amazing. It feels very peaceful and confident and joyful. And it's easier. It's so much easier when you don't have to compete with, other things, and you're not nagging, and there's no complaining, and it's so hard, right? When that happens. So I want you guys to get there. And I want you to think about all these things that we talked about today, re-listen to this. And then next week, remember, this is the second part of a three-part series. And the next week, we're going to talk about even further out. We're going to take a little bit further, big picture view, and we're going to talk about the changes that need to happen to stop building for right now and start building from the place of that person we're trying to raise, and working backwards to make sure that we get there. That's hugely transformational. Seriously, no one talks about this. I've been talking about it for years, but no one talks about this. No one thinks about it that way, but it makes perfect sense. in order for us to be confident to know that we're on that path, we have to start from there. So, we're going to talk about all of that, and we're going to talk about how love of learning supports that goal and how to make sure we get that culture in place. You guys, this has been so fun. And I know that we're going to, throughout the series, we're going to build this whole big picture for you. And also some of the reasons why you might be feeling the way you do. And if you have not already put February 12th on your calendar, it's coming up next week. I have the privilege, the honor of hosting the Inspired Homeschool Summit. Over the years, I have been privileged to have so many amazing guests on this podcast. And I have dug and learned from them and just sucked up all of their wisdom. But I know that you guys only get a little bit because we only have 30 minutes in a podcast episode. So, what I wanted to do was I wanted to bring all of the genius together and I wanted to put them in one place so that you get to hear from them and just get inspired, get strategies, get perspective shifts, get some real life things that you can use right now in all areas of your homeschool. Because let's face it, homeschooling is our whole family. It's our family life. It's parenting. It's all the things. So that's what I'm doing on February 12th. We're having a 1 day live online summit. 10 of my most amazing speakers, just 10 of them. I had to limit it because we only do in 1 day. I will probably bring in some of the others at some point, but these speakers are fantastic. They're some of the ones that we've had the most views, the most downloads for our podcast episodes with them. And they're incredible. And I can't wait for you to get just amazingness from them. You are going to feel like I am ready to have an inspired homeschool here. So, February 12th, you can just go to the free you could go to the the inspired homeschool summit.com, the inspiredhomeschoolsummit.com, and you can register free. It's totally free. If you can't attend the whole day and you want to watch the replays, there's an option you can do that too. So make sure that you go to the inspiredhomeschoolsummit.com and register and get it on your calendar because this is going to be amazing. And I'm so excited to meet you there. It's going to be really, really fun. See you then. Bye-bye.